What do you make of this deal?
It's good news. I suppose what I'd say to individuals is that, look, it is for later in the year, and it really shouldn't delay what's going on now. So if you've still, when you get your shot and your time comes up, go get it. But it is good news. I think the lesson we've learned over time, we really need to see the supplies actually landing here, and the next job is to get in people's arms. But this is good news for particularly later in the year and into next year, almost the next stage of potential vaccinations or boosters that we may be looking at.
So primarily, Doctor, who's this for? Who's going to be the beneficiary of this?
Well, I think to some degree, it's nice to have this as an insurance for later, and also the possibility that we may have to cover off on things like variants if there's evidence that we need to do that. But look, I think this is almost like an insurance policy. And it's important to have that there because, as you've seen right throughout the whole vaccine program, there are changes to the vaccine advice, but also changes in terms of supply, and it's fluctuated so much. So this gives a bit of protection if there's actually changes that occur later.
So would it be more, I mean, I've read this morning that it may well be more for the people aged under 50, given that there's a shortfall with AstraZeneca jabs now. So would it suit people aged under 50 better than say, those aged over 50, or does it not really matter?
Well, interestingly, we've got a fair bit of Pfizer that's coming in around about that same time. So when you add the amount of Pfizer doses plus the amount of Moderna doses, we technically have enough for the whole population. The issue with both the Pfizer and the Moderna is the time frame they're going to come in, and that's really more towards the end of the year. Pfizer's coming in sort of a constant amount, but really the bulk's going to come in by the end of the year, and the Moderna is only going to start coming in towards the later part of the year. So really, they're really sort of something in the distance, and what we need to do is keep on going with the vaccination program as we have now.
Do you think this is a deal that should have been struck a lot earlier?
Look, I think one could say that. Look, behind the scenes, I know that a lot of people are, calling out all the time saying, oh, God, get into negotiations now. Can I tell you that in a seller's market with vaccines, and we know that vaccines are, everybody's after them at the moment, the government is not going to be telegraphing what they're doing. They're not going to go and say in public, oh, we're desperately going to go out and go do this. So, look, for those people who are not really understanding what's going on, the government are very quietly doing their job, but they really are not out in public telegraphing what they're going to do. So in terms of the Moderna one, there were issues with this in terms of my understanding. It was in this sort of very similar to Pfizer type situation. So Pfizer was first off the bat, really. But in terms of telegraphing and delays in sort of negotiations, a lot of these probably have been occurring in the background, but not really telegraphed to the public.
There may well be more delays too. I mean, Moderna has had issues getting some of its vaccines to countries beyond the US previously.
Well, and this gets back to my point about the fact that this is good news to have this sort of insurance policy for later if we have to pivot again in terms of our vaccination program. But we've got to keep vaccinating now. And we have the AstraZeneca being the real core part of our vaccine program. We know that it prevents serious disease. We need to vaccinate that over most seriously or most vulnerable group, which is the over 50, because we need to get past that first stage. So really having this is great in the background, but it really shouldn't change what we're doing as far as the vaccination program now. And those sort of hanging out for that at the end of the year, you've got to remember, we've got to get through another winter. And the lesson has been learnt that winter is not a good time for COVID.
No, that's true. But there's also the potential for local manufacturing of this Moderna vaccine too, right? I mean, how significant would that be, and in what sort of time frame do you think that could be set up?
Look, in the past, my understanding is a lot longer than sort of people are advertising, and maybe they can do it. It's going to require an investment. Again, really, there's probably commercial issues that come into play in here, and certainly people sort of putting up their hands saying they can do it. Well, that's great, but I think the government really needs to look at the detail about what can happen. Again, saying that you're going to do something is different from actually doing it, and that's the lesson learned. I think even the government have learned that that promising about targets is not a great thing in the vaccine program. So look, positive news, but let's on the other hand hope for the best.
But could be years. Could be years before it's manufactured locally.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I think this is significant technology. It does get back to the fact that Australia hasn't been in the advance, like Europe and the UK, has been at the forefront of medication and vaccine manufacture. Like we can't do that sort of heavy third phase trial and stuff like that because we actually send our best and brightest overseas because we don't have that. And the AMA is actually pushing towards the government towards considering really longer term ideas about sovereignty as far as our ability to manufacture both medications and vaccines, which has the benefit of having this ability to upscale our technology far more quickly in the future.
Okay, Chris Moy, thanks, Doctor. Always good to chat. Talk to you soon.
It's a pleasure.